For those like myself who grew up in the golden age of Japanese role-playing games, the current generation of gaming has been a bit disappointing. Of course, it hasn't been all bad. Open-world action and Western-style RPGs have flourished, offering some of the most expansive and engrossing gaming experience we've ever seen. But for the JRPG enthusiast, the current generation has not been so kind. There are a lot of reasons for this, but in my eyes, the biggest problem with JRPGs today is the fact that many Japanese developers have lost sight of what makes a great game. In an age where processing power, polygon count, insane particle systems, and overall graphical spectacle are the #1 priority for many game developers, game mechanics and exploration seem to be taking a back seat. Not because the developers want to make boring linear games, but because the hardware simply can't handle an open-world game that looks like this. Xenoblade Chronicles is in almost every way the exact opposite of the model JRPG of this generation. It has a low poly count, muddy textures, fuzzy resolution, and simple character animations. There aren't many modern gamers who would look at it and come away impressed in any way by its graphics. The only thing it has going for it in the visual department is a very strong art design. But while the design is impressive, it certainly comes nowhere close to being fully realized because of the hardware limitations of the Wii. However, Xenoblade does a lot of other things that the model JRPG has not done. It has an absolutely massive world that takes dozens and dozens of hours, and for many well over 100 hours to explore. It has towns that are full of interesting NPCs that give hundreds of side quests. It has lead characters that are optimistic and incredibly likable, and it tells a decent story with a good pace despite the fact that there is an overwhelming number of distractions. It's the perfect answer to the question that many developers have likely asked themselves many times over the course of this generation. How do we take the classic formula that made JRPG so awesome and modernize it for a new audience? The answer, it seems, isn't in putting all your resources into graphical power, but rather in making larger and more expansive worlds. It's obvious that this was the goal of Monolith Soft when developing Xenoblade, and the result is that it's the best JRPG of this generation by far. The game takes place in one of the most interesting concepts for a gaming world I've ever seen, on the bodies of two massive titans, the Bionis and the Mechonis, one housing biotic life and the other synthetic life. In the beginning of the game, war between the two peoples of these worlds has led to an incredible devastation for many people living on the Bionis, and the player takes control of a small group that seeks to end the fighting once and for all. While this story concept isn't anything new for those who have been playing JRPGs for a long time, Xenoblade really does a good job of straying away from a lot of cliches that have plagued the genre for many years. There are tons of twists and turns that I genuinely did not see coming at all, and the overall experience is pretty fresh. It gets a little convoluted toward the end, which frankly is a pastime for JRPG storylines, and that disappointed me a lot, but there's no denying that for the most part, the developers really tried to do something different here. There's still way too much dialogue, with every enemy having to explain his or her motives in excruciating detail, and party members that talk non-stop in battles. But overall, the writing is smart and effective, which is something we've missed sorely in JRPGs in recent times. In complement of Xenoblade's interesting story is a wonderful cast of characters, excluding one really annoying one, which is again a JRPG pastime. What I really like about the cast is that they're all incredibly optimistic. No one is fighting with identity issues, depression, or arbitrary insecurity. What we have here is simply a great group of people who want to do all they can to save the world they love, and that's a very refreshing thing to see in a JRPG. Each character is well developed and easy to like. Again, except for one character who I really didn't care for at all. But what's so great about Xenoblade is that the relationships between the characters aren't limited solely to narrative context, but also carry over into the game mechanics via an affinity system. In battles, affinity is earned alongside experience and ability points, which carries over into unlocking events called heart-to-heart moments. In these heart-to-heart moments, a lot of background on the characters and their relationships with one another are greatly expanded, really bringing the concepts of friendship and unity into every aspect of the game. Increasing affinity between party members also unlocks affinity coins that award the player with stat bonuses and other party boosters, making party development quite an important task throughout the entire experience. This will cause the player to change who he or she places in the active party, which will in turn lead to discovering new battle strategies. Which leads right into one of Xenoblade's strongest aspects, the battle system. Never before have I seen a battle system of this kind work so fluently. It's modeled after the kind of battle system you would see in a modern MMO, but it has some really interesting features that make what would otherwise be overwhelming very easy to use. Like many MMOs, each character has a list of abilities that can be cycled through in battle. These abilities are purchased at shops or learned through leveling up, and can be improved by spending ability points that are earned in battle. However, what makes Xenoblade's battle system so cool is that the abilities are color-coded in order to help the player remember what effect these abilities will have on the battlefield. This makes the game so much easier to jump right into off the bat, because rather than having to memorize that the ability called Wild Down causes the topple status ailment, the player can look at the green icon and automatically understand that all green abilities cause topple. All blue abilities are healing/party buff abilities. All red abilities deal physical damage. All yellow abilities cause daze, etc. This one simple design decision makes learning a complicated battle system so much easier, and I really appreciated that since I'm not really the biggest fan of the complex nature of MMOs. Another great thing about the battle system is that the character's position relative to the enemy is almost always a key factor. There are some abilities that inflict more damage from behind, only cause a status ailment if used from the side, or only work if other status ailments have been applied first, making position and timing a key factor in battle strategies. It's an overall engaging system that combines fast-paced action with menu-based commands, and in my opinion, it is executed almost flawlessly. The most impressive aspect about this game overall, though, is its massive world and true sense of epic scale, all accomplished on the Wii no less. The area maps are simply colossal, dwarfing the size of any other JRPG world I have seen this generation. And the music is just amazing. Composed by the likes of Yasunori Mitsuda of Chrono Trigger fame and Yoko Shimomura, who composed the Kingdom Hearts soundtrack, Xenoblade's music is a powerful extension to what is already an emotional and gripping tale. There hasn't been a soundtrack like this for me since Final Fantasy IX, where almost every song on the soundtrack has a melody worth memorizing. The massive scope of the game, which requires hours and hours of exploration, accompanied by a wonderful soundtrack to listen to while you're doing it, is easily the most enjoyable part of the game for me. Overall, Xenoblade represents to me the answer that has eluded many Japanese developers over the current generation of gaming. It's a shining example of how Japanese role-playing games should be developed for modern audiences. It isn't perfect, relying on a few too many old cliches, but it is a strong example of how, if managed by the right people, JRPGs can be just as relevant in the gaming world today as they were in the days of the Super Nintendo and the PlayStation. I give Xenoblade Chronicles a final score of 4 out of 5.